This is Israel News Update, December 31st, 2024. These are the days following Hanukkah and following the death of Jimmy Carter, an American president who oversaw a peace treaty, the only peace treaty, or the first peace treaty. There was also one with Jordan a few years later, the first peace treaty between Israel and an Arab country. In this case, the leading Arab country, Egypt. It was Menachem Begin, who was the Israel prime minister, U.S. President Jimmy Carter, and Egyptian leader Anwar Sadat, who sat at a table on April 1st, 1979. And the question is whether it was going to be real. What I said at the time I was in the Foreign Service of Israel, said everything depends on one thing, and that's education. Whether there would be some kind of educational system to follow up to make sure that the peace would be taught. It was taught in the Israeli schools, but not in the Arab schools, and there's the rub, there's the problem. And people say, how can you be critical of Carter? Well, you because he made this deal, and all I can say is we'll begin by quoting Shakespeare. The evil that men do live after them. The good is often in turn in their bones. In other words, yes, it happened. It was a good thing, a peace treaty. But what we remember about Jimmy Carter was since he oversaw the peace deal, was he was a thorn in the backside of Israel in many ways, which we'll talk about. Um, Carter, he became the person who paved the way for the Islamic takeover of Iran and for the ouster of the Shah. And that we now know the consequences are. We're now sitting in hindsight after the last few months of war with Iran, which has also really resulted in hundreds of ballistic missiles coming from Iran, and the fact that there was a U.S. president that gave Iran the opportunity to exploit his proximity to Israel. That's where the problem lies. But not only that, Jimmy Carter also stuck the apartheid label on Israel. I was present in Geneva on December 1st, 2003, when he led the Geneva Initiative, and he said that so long as there's Jewish communities, Jews living in Judea, Samaria, Gaza, then this violates the peace treaty, except for one thing: it's not mentioned in the peace treaty that Carter oversaw anything about Jews in Judea, Samaria, positively or negatively. It's not mentioned. It's something to be discussed. But that's not what Carter said. And I confronted Carter. He just changed the subject. That was it. Now, he is known, his legacy is the man who demonized the Jews living in Judea, Samaria, and the guy who oversaw PLO elections as if they were democratic. Now, when I asked Carter immediately after the PA elections, which he oversaw in 1996, how he could account for the fact that Arafat engineered the blow up of the home of his opponent, who ran against him, Carter responded with a chuckle and said, "Well, we have problems like that in Chicago too." Now, what I want to deal with now is the issues that we're dealing with currently in the next 8 days. Actually, it's a coincidence that Hanukkah lasted 8 days. Now we're going to have 8 days of mourning for Jimmy Carter in the United States, and the issue of the strength in Iran, which is straight on, as I just began to mention, on the back of Carter, and the issue of the strengthening of the presence of this label, this apartheid label. It does not go away, and that is where the issue is, because now what we've had is an atmosphere which focuses on Israel as a demonized state, as the illegitimate state, and this is Carter's doing. Carter basically refined the language in dealing with Israel, dealing with Judea, Samaria, dealing with Israel's future, and that as if Israel cannot exist as a democratic state so long as there is Jews living in Judea, Samaria, Gaza, and even in Jerusalem. And this is the fly in the ointment in terms of his legacy. It's not a legacy which is good. Again, we know that he engineered the peace process, but look what happened with Egypt. Egypt, which according to what, if you read the mainstream media and follow the mainstream Israel government press office announcements and proclamations, you would think that Egypt is a partner for peace. Except those of us who are looking at the education system in Egypt, we don't see any signs of peace. Not only education, but also the 60-60, okay, um, bridges across, which are built across the Suez Canal, which with troops, Egyptian troops, set to attack. Who are they attacking? They're not attacking Ethiopia. No, they're from Israel's Egypt's southern neighbor. They can attack Israel itself, and that's not something that was thought of, but that's what's happening right now. It's downplayed. You can find it if you look in the in the details of the media and of research institutions. You'll find it, but not much. Now, one agency came out with a report that Egypt has now refined its school system and that it's teaching peace in the school system. So we asked the agency that I run, the Bedein Center for Near East Policy Research. We have access to researchers, and we said, okay, if you say there's a peace curriculum, where is it? Yes, we see it was put out, but where is the audio visual evidence of such? We get no answer. So apparently there are some people trying to pull something over on Israel to make it look like there's a peace, but there is no peace. Very important. The propaganda that emanates from Egypt, it's as if they're in full state of war with Israel. Now, something which has not been gotten much publicity is the full-scale aid that Egypt has provided to Hamas during this war, the current war that Israel's engaged with Hamas. Very important. If it was in Israel's consciousness, the consciousness of the people of Israel and of world opinion, they would look differently on the accord that Israel reached with Egypt on April 1st, 1979. But it's not being discussed at all. It's as if I'm living in a counter reality when I see the material that I see from open sources in Israeli intelligence and from different other intelligence agencies from Germany, from the U.S., from the UK, from Canada, which all point to what I'm talking about Egypt in a war stance against Israel and being totally supportive of the Hamas in the war, not being shown at all. This is very important to understand that this is the frustration of what happens when you are close to material which is not being publicized, and there's the rub. So I'm going to run a movie at the end of this clip now called UNRWA at War. Now, UNRWA at War is a movie that takes the 25 movies our agency has produced, which you can find at IsraelBehindTheNews.com, over the past, how many years? 20 years. And you'll see a composite movie to show the actual incitement taking place all the time. And again, Egypt is the prime mover and sponsor of the incitement, together, of course, with Hamas. And another factor, which doesn't get a lot of publicity, Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is pictured as a new peace partner for Israel. However, their total support for Hamas have from the public domain, and we get more than 500 pieces of information on. We're going to put it out on our site over the next few days. Basically, about the Saudi stands for peace, for war. Excuse me, for war, and you'll see it very, very clearly. So again, it's being denied, but this is something which we have to deal with. Because leaders of Israel intelligence go in and out of Saudi Arabia all the time, speaking with people there. There's an illusion that this means peace. This does not mean peace. So that's the whole story. So now in terms of Carter's legacy, going back to Carter for a moment, Carter's legacy as a person who promoted peace and stability in the Middle East, he was given the responsibility by the United States of doing how should I say, walking between the sides as democratic institutions were developed in the Palestinian Authority. And there were two elections, one in 1996, one in 2005. And in both cases, the Fatah, which is the mainstream movement of the Palestinian Authority, was the prime mover in the Palestinian elections, which which Carter oversaw. What was very important back in 1996, I was there when the results came through. There was overwhelming victory for Fatah. Now, when I asked Carter how he could account for the fact that he's a person who was saying that it was a democratic election, I said, what about the fact that Arafat's main opponent, his house was blown up a couple days before the election? His answer was, well, we have problems like that in Chicago too. Very nice for my friends in Chicago. Uh, so you have a situation where the war goes on, um, and the position of the Fatah government, which then in 2006, 2007 became a Hamas-dominated government, is to create a war curriculum, which you can see the selection of the war curriculum on our site, IsraelBehindTheNews.com, on the front page, the home page, and you'll see what we find. A very prominent research institution offered us substantial funds for our agency if we could show some audio and visual evidence of peace being taught in the Palestinian schools. And we need the money, but we also our integrity is important. There is no such thing. Carter, to his dying day, claimed that there's a democratic Palestine and with a purpose of peace, and we don't see it. And this is one of the things we have to deal with. In her eulogy for President Carter, one of Carter's proteges, a woman named Samantha Power, who became the administrator of USAID, the United States Agency for International Development, and she claims that they have a peace curriculum, and that's why she's helping to fund it. And this is, of course, the opposite of what's going on. It's a total war curriculum. Don't believe me? Look at our site. Look at the school books. Look at what's there. And we've been filming the schools over the years, over the last 10 years. And again, the composite film when we're at war will be shown as soon as we finish my verbiage here. And she, in her eulogy for Carter, which was on the front page of the New York Times, she talked about a peaceful Palestinian Authority with democratically run institutions, which was set up, and she ascribes that to the Carter legacy. Well, that has nothing to do with reality. The fact that the demonization of Israel, which has been fostered by Carter in his book, in which he claims from 25 years ago, which I read and I discussed it personally with Carter, and he wasn't happy with my questions. But the book claims that Israel is heading towards an apartheid state, and nothing having to do with democracy. And that is his legacy, making that kind of allegation against Israel, which has no basis in reality. But on the other hand, who cares about reality? And it's a matter of lack of integrity on the part of Mr. Carter. And it's in a sense, Carter's death during Hanukkah, the Feast of Lights, is also a sign for us in Israel that Hanukkah is a time when Israel liberates itself from the forces of the Hellenistic forces, which try to take Israel away from its Judaism, away from its essence, and tries to impose another system. And the whole business of Hellenism and the Greek culture, which provides an open atmosphere, in this case, the open atmosphere that Carter promoted, had very little to do with democracy, freedom, or the other ideals that Carter claimed to stand for. So that's about it. What I want to say at this point. Take a look at the movie that we're showing you when we're at war, and please look at our films. Look at our website, the opening page, the home page of our website, IsraelBehindTheNews.com, and be in touch with me. I'm happy to hear any feedback you have. My email is on the site, dbedein@IsraelBehindTheNews.com. It's very clear in terms of what's going on, and the fact that there's a unity government between on their side between Hamas and Fatah spoils the notion that there's moderate Palestinians and not moderate Palestinians. They're in this together for a total war, but they're doing it like gentlemen, wearing ties, acting diplomatically, and the legacy of Carter is how to do that while providing a war system at the same time. So this is David Bedein with Israel News Update. I'm sitting in Jerusalem, and because of the technologies of today, you can contact me at any time. My phone number is on the site, israelbehindthenews.com, and we will continue filming doing everything we can to provide the truth for people. The U.S. law forbids the United States from aiding UNRWA or the Palestinian Authority so long as this incitement is going on. We'll see what happens under Trump. Whether Trump will be swayed by the Saudis, who are a main funder of the Palestinian Authority and Hamas at the same time. We'll see what if that influences Trump's decisions, and we'll see what happens in terms of Jewish support for Israel, because too many, in my opinion, too many Jews are swayed by the sweet words of Carter, but not by the essence of what's going on. This is David Bedein reporting from Jerusalem, Israel News Update on New Year's Eve, which is tonight, also the last day of Hanukkah. Thank you.
On October 7th, some 3,000 Hamas terrorists invaded Israel. By the end of the day, they had slaughtered some 1,200 people. Victims were shot, stabbed, burned alive, and raped. The terrorists also kidnapped some 250 people, including the bodies of people they had killed, and dragged them back to the Gaza Strip. While the world was surprised by the attack, the truth is that Hamas had been preparing to strike against Israel in this way for decades. Hamas is a militant Islamic fundamentalist movement that has run the Gaza Strip since 2007. In that time, jihad, or holy war, has been its primary concern, the goal being Israel's destruction. For more than 20 years, Iran has spent billions to train and supply Hamas and help it build a network of tunnels to prepare for its war against Israel. Yet Iranian weapons are only part of the story. Hamas, with its iron grip on the Gaza Strip, has inculcated a noxious mix of anti-Semitism, militant Islamic theology, and nationalism to gain the support of the population. The crux of its ideology is the destruction of Israel and the demonization of Jews, whom adherents consider subhuman. Once Israel is destroyed, Hamas members and other Palestinians aspire to activate the so-called right of return, which would allow them to settle in cities that are currently in Israel. At the center of the October 7th attack was an unlikely source of funding and manpower. It came from a shadowy United Nations organization called UNRWA, or the United Nations Relief and Works Agency. The name sounds innocuous, but in truth, the agency, which has received billions and billions of US dollars, has become an arm of Hamas. Its unions are led by high-ranking Hamas officials. In its schools and in its curriculum, UNRWA teaches hundreds of thousands of children that Israel is an illegitimate state that should be destroyed. This would allow the right of return to be implemented. Instead of instilling peace into the Palestinian population, UNRWA nurtures war in its school system. At UNRWA schools, education is not limited to texts and is not confined to the classroom. Inside schoolyards, students pass by violent graffiti that glorifies killers. One of the Palestinian heroes is Dalal Mughrabi, whose image adorns alleyways near UNRWA schools and neighborhoods. In 1978, she led a terror gang that commandeered a bus and murdered 38 passengers, including 13 children. On the paths of UNRWA camps, children speak about Mughrabi with awe and reverence.
صور شهداء سووا عمليات إن سووا عمليات لأجل الوطن يعني دلال المغربي سوت عملية تفجير فجرت حالها عند الجيش
يعني زي أخت وأم بنت بلدي دلال المغربي هي شهيدة فلسطينية شردت فجرت اليهود وهجرتهم.
UNRWA schools portray Mughrabi as a role model. In its current curriculum, Mughrabi's photo appears in a study book for third graders. It is a key lesson in Our Beautiful Language, a new textbook issued in 2019. On page 63, pupils learn to chant the Land of the Nobles. The assignment calls for kids to liberate Palestine and to exterminate the current residents of Israel, the Jews. Here they chant the song in the classroom. In the days and weeks that followed the attack, we learned of UNRWA's deep involvement. Here, an UNRWA worker kidnaps a victim of Hamas. In this audio recording, we hear an UNRWA educator describing a kidnapped Israeli woman as a noble horse.
وين انت؟ وين السبايا والدنيا ودين عنا خلينا نايم. انت بالشارع نام في الدار شارع اسكت احنا عند السبايا هنا مسك واحده. ايش جبت؟ خيل فرس. جاب حصان؟ صار اصلا اصيل مش حصان كديش تبع القرعان.
Following October 7th, terror tunnels and weapons were found in UNRWA schools and in the bedrooms of UNRWA students.
מתחת למיטה של הבייבי גרל יש לנו פה ערימות של רקטות מתחת למיטה בכל הבית סך הכל מצאנו גם עוד פגזים.
Weapons were even found hidden inside a child's teddy bear. Children have been at the center of Hamas's plan to destroy Israel. To help reach this goal, some 500,000 UNRWA students have attended Hamas summer camps in Gaza over the past decade. At these camps, they have been issued weapons, and they have been trained to kill and kidnap Israelis.
طبيعة العلاقة بين حماس والأونروا هي علاقة طيبة وجيدة. نحن نحرص على تسهيل وتيسير أعمال الأونروا ويحدث تواصل في بعض الأمور التي قد يحتاجون لتسهيل الأمور ولكن الآن كما قلت أن الاتصال المباشر هو مع الحكومة.
فإن الجنود الأشداء قادمون بإذن الله عز وجل سوف يرونه في حيفا وتل أبيب وكل مكان من أرضنا الفلسطينية.
قررت بأن الكفاح المسلح على رأس الوسائل التي تسترد بها الأرض وهذا شيء معلوم من الدين بالضرورة.
لم يبقى إلا حل وحيد هو أن نقاوم هذا المحتل حتى يندحر مع الأرض الفلسطينية. أي اتفاقية تسوية لا تعدو أن تكون هدنة مؤقتة ولذلك ما يجري على الأرض دائما كلما انتهت جولة كان الاستعداد للجولة الأخرى حتى يزول هذا الاحتلال.
هذا الجيل الذي استهدف بالتدريب والعناية والرعاية في عمليات كشفية جهادية حركية على تدريب السلاح البسيط الخفيف لنعدهم للمستقبل لكل النوائب التي يواجهنا بها عدونا الغاشم.
UNRWA's militant indoctrination of students and Hamas's summer camps have brought tens of thousands of new recruits to the Islamist group. These same UN students helped form the front lines of the Hamas terrorists who invaded Israel. Let's have a look at the Hamas-UNRWA partnership of terror in recent years. It stretches from UN teachers in the classroom all the way up to the top of the Hamas leadership.
فلسطين عربية من المي للمية. أعلى. فلسطين عربية من المي للمية. فلسطين عربية من المي للمية. بدنا حيفا بدنا عكا، بدنا حيفا بدنا عكا، رايحين على الأقصى رايحين على الأقصى. فلسطين إلنا من المي للمية.
طلعت على صرفتنا فتحت الزنازين، صفينا نضرب الصواريخ على حيفا على تل أبيب وبعض المستوطنات. فنحكي مبارك لأهل غزة لانتصارها، مبارك. وإن شاء الله سوف نتم مقاومين حتى الموت. وإحنا نوصل هذه الرسالة لنتنياهو: نموت ولا بنركع، ولا تحسبن الذين قتلوا في سبيل الله أمواتا بل أحياء عند ربهم يرزقون. تكبير! صدق الله العظيم. تكبير! الله أكبر.
هذا هو الجيل الذي يتأهل للتحرير وللنصر وللعودة وللاستقلال. يا ويلكم يا بني صهيون من هذا الجيل الذي لا يعرف الضعف طريقا إلى قلبه، جيل الحجارة وجيل الصاروخ وجيل الأنفاق وجيل العمليات الاستشهادية.
في سبيل الله نمضي،
في سبيل الله نمضي،
في سبيل الله نمضي،
في سبيل الله نمضي.
في قطاع غزة يوجد أكثر من 50 مخيم، العدد اللي التحق فيه أكثر من 15,000 فارس من فرسان حماس. في البداية احنا بدينا في المحاضرات الأخلاقية والتعبئة والتوجيه، كانت عن القرآن الكريم ثم أخلاق الشاب المسلم، ثم بدأت بالتدريبات العسكرية وفتح الميدان وتدريبات اللياقة والمشاة العسكرية، ثم تلاها تدريبات على السلاح وفن التعامل مع السلاح. كسرنا حاجز الخوف عند هؤلاء الفتية أو الشباب في مقتبل عمرهم. الشباب استطاعوا اقتحام النيران، تفجير. في الأمس كان هناك تفجير المغتصبات الصهيونية، كانت هناك أجسام، وتعلموا فن استعمال المتفجرات وتفجيرها.
لأنه نعمل حرب، إنه نفرج اليهود إنه إحنا مش إنه إحنا مش شاطرين، إحنا قوايا كمان. في ناس بحبوا فلسطين، بدهم يحاربوا وبضحوا بدمهم عشان فلسطين. أنا بدي أهزمهم بالحرب، بدي أهزمهم.
But Hamas's influence is not limited to the Gaza Strip. Since October 7th, it has strengthened its standing in the West Bank. Let's listen to what students think about the attack, which emboldened their belief in the right of return.
أنا كتيب على الحطاب من مخيم الجلزون، الأصل عنابة. أنا من مدرسة ذكور الجلزون.
طب إيش بتتعلم في المدرسة عن حق العودة؟
لو نضل نقاوم عبال ما تتحرر فلسطين.
شو بتفكر عن الحرب بين إسرائيل وحماس؟
إنه جهاد، نصرنا واستشهاد.
مين راح يربح هذا الحرب؟
حماس إن شاء الله. الله معنا إحنا دائما، طول ما الله معنا فيش حد بيهزمنا.
طب إيش أنت حابب تكون لما تكبر؟
أنا مجاهد مقاوم.
طب بتكره اليهود؟
ولا أكيد.
ليش؟
يا رب يموتوا كلهم ونرجع راضينا. احنا بدنا فلسطين إلنا لحالنا، وإن شاء الله لقدام تتحرر ونرجع بلادنا، وهدول الكلاب اليهود نخبط عروسهم إن شاء الله. يعني أنا حابب أجاهد وقاتل في سبيل الله واستشهد.
هل الهجوم اللي على إسرائيل اللي صار في 7 أكتوبر مرتبط بحق العودة؟
أكيد.
ليه؟
لأن حماس والمقاومة هيك هم بلشوا الحرب على إنه في أي وقت إن شاء الله إنهم يتحرروا هيك.
أنت مستعدة تقاتلي عشانه؟
أكيد، هاي مش بلدهم.
تكره اليهود؟
أكيد.
ليه؟ مين هم الأبطال؟
طبعا أول شيء مقاومة حماس، ثاني شيء الشهداء.
شو رأيك بنصر الله وحزب الله؟ مناح.
طب انت شو حابب تكون بس تكبر؟
مقاوم زي عمي.
والحرب اللي صارت بعديها هذا الاشي مرتبط بحق العودة؟
لأنه بقاوم عشان وطننا وهجموا عشان برضو ناخذ وطننا.
برأيك مين راح يربح الحرب؟
إن شاء الله حماس لأنه الله واقف معهم. بدنا نقاوم وبدنا نقاوم حتى نرجع. إنه أقاوم أطلع عند ربنا أصير شهيدة.
طب هل تكره اليهود؟ ليش؟
كثير. القدس لنا والأرض لنا والله بقوته معنا. إنه الهجوم اللي كان 7 أكتوبر مرتبط لأنه رجع لنا أراضينا في 7 من أكتوبر، وبعدين في 7 أكتوبر وأخذوهم الاحتلال. إنه لازم كانوا يعلمونا في المدرسة عن حق العودة، إنه لازم إن نعود، وحتى لو أعطونا مصاري لإسرائيل، حتى لو أعطونا مصاري لازم نعود. هي وطننا القدس وعاصمتنا الأبدية ولازم نقاوم عشانها. بكرههم أنا بالنسبة لي لأنهم حقراء وبنجسوا دولتنا. إن شاء الله نصر الله قريب، راح يطلع الإسرائيليين من بلادنا. إن شاء الله أطلع شهيد أو مقاوم.
والله بدهم يقسموا القدس بين اليهود والفلسطينيين.
لا، مش راح يرضى. احنا مش راح نرضى ولا يمكن راح نرضى. هذا القدس إلنا يعني إلنا، مش راح نتخلى عنها. فداها للأقصى بنعطي روحها عشان ما تروحش لليهود. يقول لك اطلع من دار لازم تطلع، لا، لازم ندافع ونقاوم عشان تتحرر فلسطين وترجع أراضينا بإذن الله تعالى. لا، ولا يمكن إن هذه الأقصى لفلسطين محل القدس إن نقتل اليهود، تخلص من اليهود. مش يعني مسكت السكين هيك وراح كنت طخك يعني شهيد، لا. الشهيد يعني اللي بقتل 4 5 أو 1 يعني بتفرقش، بس كبار إن شاء الله مقاوم. قمري الشهيد عمري الوحيد حضن الردى.
لا، عمره ما راح يكون سلام بيننا وبين إسرائيل، الدولة الصهيونية وليس الإسرائيلية، الدولة الصهيونية. نعم، أنا بحب أكون شهيد عشان أكون رمز لمن بعدي ليقدمون أرواحهم لأرض فلسطين. الحل القدس إن ما يكربوا عليها اليهود أبدا ويطلعوا من فلسطين كلها وما يضل فيه ولا صهيوني في فلسطين.
شو بيحكوا لك مثلا في المدرسة عن إسرائيل؟
بيحكون عن إسرائيل إنها دولة ظالمة وفاسدة. بتعلم عن مدرسة عن حق العودة، إن في أكتر من حق للعودة، يعني لازم إحنا نرجع لديارنا ونعيش في ديارنا بكل سلام وأريحية.
شو رأيك في الإشي اللي صار يوم 7 أكتوبر؟
شي بيرفع الراس، يعني وقتيتها اليهود تلبكوا مش عارفين شو بدهم يساووا وقتيتها، يعني سووا وهدموا وحركوا إسرائيل.
هل هذا الإشي مرتبط بحق العودة؟
مزبوط، مرتبط. يعني بكاتلوا عشان نرجع أرضنا واليهود يطلعوا من أرضنا، يعني لازم نقاوم عشان نرجع لأرضنا. إذا ما قاومناش ولا عمرنا بنرجع ليها. يعني في السلام مش ظابط والمفاوضات مش ظابط، لازم تصير حرب عشان نرجع.
Whenever there's a break in an armed conflict, there's always an opportunity to think anew and act anew. After a year of armed conflict with UNRWA child soldiers on the battlefield, the time has come for policymakers to pioneer ways for UNRWA to operate according to the principles of the United Nations and not according to the dictates of a terror organization.